right, small kind Hawaiian time right now. It is Wednesday night. Usually I'm on about 18 minutes earlier. Actually, who knows? Usually I'm Hawaiian time meeting it anyways, but total Hawaiian time, small kind tonight. Let me get situated. It's a big day. We're gonna get along with our friends on Facebook. We're gonna bring in our friends on Facebook. So when you all get out here, I want you to jump in the comments because we're gonna talk about something really important, something that's been hitting the internet waves recently, and that is obviously the UH football season getting ready to start. But everybody asking, how am I going to see the game? And actually, if you look on the schedule right now, the game is still TBA. So I'm pretty sure the game's still going to be played. But I should tell you something about where TV is right now. We don't even know what time the game is. So we don't know where that's going to be on TV or not, but we're going to talk about the pay-per-view deal as well, because that's something that I think a lot of people have wanted to talk about, and it's important to talk about. When I think of growing up in the 80s and 90s, mostly 90s, but a lot of 80s, that's when I started watching football in 1989 when I was 6. Anyways, not just football, but I was watching wrestling, a lot of wrestling. And I love WWF, which was WWF at the time. And Junior's in there. Get in that comments, let's talk about stuff. But the WWF and the WWE currently always has these pay-per-views, right? And that was like such a cool thing if you could see one. And all these people had these scramblers. I will not confirm nor deny whether my family had one, but maybe for a partially of time. I know that some people that did have these things, but these scramblers that some people had could allow you to bypass the very antiquated analog technology that was employed by cable technicians back then. Now everything's digitized and everything is secured with like very cryptic algorithms and stuff. But back then you could just like put this little dongle thing on the back of your cable box and get pay-per-view and some other channels. But mostly you could watch WWF, right? And the thing about WWF and the way they used pay-per-view and UFC, some of my favorite UFCs, UFC 1 and 2. Junior said, yep, the black box. So those are my favorite UFCs still. Like the today's UFC doesn't stack up, in my opinion, to those, because it was just like so different. And that's the thing. It's like it's so different. It's something that when you're watching pay-per-view, right? You're getting like a spectacle. Like I don't know if I ordered this or watched it on my friend's box, but they had like Detroit versus imports, and it was like muscle cars from like Detroit and Michigan and stuff, and they were racing like Hondas and I don't know, like Asian cars, and probably some European cars as well. But even that was like different. Like, oh, okay, this is pay-per-view. Whoa. So when we talk about pay-per-view in Hawaii, though, I mostly talk about UH football in the same breath, which is very strange. Growing up, I would never think football would be, on pay-per-view. But it's been on pay-per-view now for almost 10 years, 9 years at least. I believe 2011 is when Spectrum got the contract, according to the paper, and according to the press release. And prior to that, the games were on K5. And even prior to that, the games were on other stations, Kiku. And we talked to Rick Blangiardi. And if you watched my previous interviews with both mayoral candidates, Rick Blangiardi and Keith Hamimi, I would very much encourage you to go and watch both of those, especially if you're voting on Oahu, because I found interviewing both of them was really kind of inspiring, because I think that they both have sincere desire to help and sincere objective that they want to fulfill in terms of taking this office of mayor. And neither have held public office, and neither have are seeking a term in office. They're not lifelong politicians, which is great as well. Not to say that that's a bad thing to be a lifelong politician, um, but I think both of them bring such a fresh perspective, but also they overlap in the sports realm a lot. So I got a chance to talk about sports with both of them, with Rick Blangiardi and Keith Hamamilan. Rick Blangiardi um, has very intimate knowledge of the UH rights because he helped to negotiate the initial rights after he was a coach. He was player, coach on the '73 team that beat UW. We talked about that. If you go back and watch that show, Rick Blangiardi, for UH fans that want to hear some good stories, because talked about that UH football win in 1973 against Seattle, and that Paul Honda actually and Jerry Company, they have they share some of like old articles, which is pretty cool. So if you follow them, the old like Star Advertiser clippings, and it was cool. They recently did one on that game, and it's neat as those games are coming to light, and because I think a lot of people really need to, and maybe that's a series that I need to start doing too. Is more like UH history and trying to cull together different eras, because UH has gone through so many eras, and that's why I think fans are so important. That's why they are the stakeholders of the program, the underpinnings of the program. And we're here for the program. I am here for the program, the general program. I'm not here for players or coaches or administrators or the school. I'm here for the program. Those are all encompassing things. But the program is transcendent above all of those because they're representative of the people. Yes, they are a team within a government entity that's within a structure, a business structure that requires funding and is requires more than people just saying rah rah in the stands, right? It requires a lot of money. So I'm not saying that, but you're nothing without fans. Without the fans, you cannot keep the program going. No program can. No program can. So, foundationally, when we talk about TV rights, we need to start and talk about the fan base, first of all. So, Rick Blangiardi talked about in 1984 how amazing it was to be in Klum Gym, initially Klum Gym, being in Klum Gym and feeling that excitement of all of the fans in the stands and the volleyball game going on. And it's crazy. I've seen some of those old games. They played them before on TV. So if you go back and like, they it's a very different era. So the game, like there aren't as many quick sets. There aren't as many like bics or very fast sets to the pins or anything. So it's a very different volleyball game, and I'm not gonna say anything other than that. But even then, when the game was slightly maybe not as fast as it is today, people were like super into it. People were like going crazy. Like people just loved it, and that cultivated the fan base. Them seeing that, and Rick Blangiardi talks about it. I'm going to play a big chunk of that interview after I talk here, and I very highly encourage everybody to watch. It's about 17 minutes long, and so it'll be worth your time to hear about the very beginning, the 1984, getting that tape delay, him having to convince Stan Sheriff, who at the time was the athletic director, to put it on tape delay. So, because he was worried about, Stan Sheriff was worried about people not coming to the games, right? If they can watch it on TV, why are they going to come? Because we're having such great crowds at Aloha Stadium. And why would we, put this product? So that's when I first used that word, because that's a huge word we're going to talk about a lot too. Why would I give it away for free? I mean, and people are not going to come back. And what Rick Blangiardi countered with was them seeing the product, seeing the sense, seeing the atmosphere will convince them to come to the games. It will inspire a new legion of fans to come. And you saw that in the 80s, and UH enjoyed tremendous amount of fans. I mean, average over 40,000 in some games, and some seasons, and that's just crazy and unheard of when we can barely average half of that today. Some of that is tied into the television. Some of that is tied into the lack of marketing, the lack of the cultivation of a fan base, which is the job, the fiduciary responsibility of UH as well. Because it is their responsibility, yes, as CFOs, because basically that's what ADs are, chief financial officers of these programs, these multi-million-dollar programs, and that's not like we're not in the middle of a crisis too. That's something I want to talk about as well, because as much as I love football, I give everything really of my time and all the things I love and my passions. I tie into my love for the sports and Hawaii sports fans, and it's just a product of my expression, a byproduct of the things that I love to do as Hawaii sports fans. But there's so much money tied into football. I can't act like I might have to put a blind spot sometimes to reconcile how so much more money is going to the pockets of people, yet nothing much has changed on the labor side, right? So like when we talk about NFL and players making a lot of money, a lot of people talk, oh yeah, the NFL is all about money. That's why I kind of watch the NFL. You watch Division One football and you don't think it's about money? Because it is. Because it definitely is. That's why all of these conferences are playing. It's just that's facts. But at the same time, we live with it. I'm planning on being there to every game. I want to be there. It's my team. We have to live through the crisis and the, um, you know, whatever. I'm not going to justify playing. This is not what this is about. This is about the television. But since we're going to go ahead and play, um, what we know is that money is definitely involved, and the deal comes with it. So recently, the national schedule was announced, and UH got 2 broadcasts. They got the Wyoming game, which is going to be October 30th, and there's a Boise game. So one on Fox FS1 and one on CBS Network. So the stepbrother stations of CBS and Fox. But interestingly enough, in those contracts with the Mountain West, some of those games are guaranteed supposed to be on CBS or Fox. So maybe they're going to flex them to the bigger stations as well. So at least 3, I believe. So that'd be cool. If that Boise game, you never know. It could be on CBS. Say both teams were both undefeated or something, and we've been beating teams handily, and we make a big name for ourselves. Maybe that game will get flexed, So to CBS. But I know a lot of the schools want to keep the times that they have. But the UH game, the first game is still TBA against Fresno, so we don't really even know what time that game's going to start at yet, and what TV station is going to be on. But back to the pay-per-view deal. Is it good or bad? Because a lot of people talk about like we need this or we need that. I'll just start with the money issue. I'll make it easy for you guys. Just in my research and the facts that I know around the contract and the possible payout we know what the payout is from the Spectrum contract, which is supposed to be more than the one that just expired. And there's kind of an estimate of what the Mountain West is. So it goes about like 1 in 3, like 1 million here from the Mountain West, around-ish 1.1, and about 3 for the new deal, hopefully, because it should be higher than the 2.5, right? So it should be about 4. And that would be the same as the Mountain West, right? So that is why the deal kind of works out with the financially, because the UH is getting really total. That's why even in the contract we're like, this doesn't include our prorated. Yeah, it's not that much though what they're getting for the conference. Also, so the way they picked the games, they clearly didn't want UH games, and CBS has the rights to the Boise road game. So I could imagine if we weren't playing Boise, we probably wouldn't have got a game at all, because all the Boise games were going to get scooped. Right, so they're sitting there like drafting, like we're drafting, and then you get like CBS and Fox, and they're picking games out of the games they want. They take turns, but there's rules as to what games they can have and stuff. So, that the way the pick came is the way it came out is how the games that UH got. Let's face it, Boise is probably the reason that UH got that Boise game. Plus, it'll be in Hawaii, and we'll have it'll be great to be able to see the views around Hawaii, but. Still only 2 games. And what's interesting is that the Spectrum contract calls for 7 games to be played. So I don't know how they're going to do that, because they're only going to have 6 extra pukas in the schedule. So they're not going to be able to get to 7 unless something else works out. Who knows? Maybe they add another game. But if you look at the numbers, okay, just flat out numbers, pay-per-view deal is not terrible, because financially you're not looking as bad as the other conferences. As the other schools. Yet, let's talk about the Mountain West, because the Mountain West is clearly does not favor UH, put it that way. And neither does UH get anything thrown their way, no bones, right? It's like from the very beginning. So let's go back to 2012, because the Boise thing is important to talk about, how Boise negotiates their contract, why they got so mad, why they even sued the Mountain West and dropped their suit, but went to court against the Mountain West in Idaho, and then dropped it because they felt they were going to be, they felt they were owed that extra money, their extra side negotiation. So the crazy thing is though, Boise is saying like we deserve this money. We stayed in 2012 when we were going to go to the Big East. Okay, the Big East does not exist anymore. First of all, yes, back then it was a BCS conference. We don't even use BCS, non-BCS. We say Power Five and mid-major, or Power Five and Group of Five. I guess is the appropriate terminology now. But you're using that provision from 8 years ago, a conference that doesn't even exist anymore, wanted us, and we stick around, so therefore we should have this ability to negotiate on our own. Okay, well that's a Mountain West thing. So the Mountain West and Boise can figure that out. Because clearly, if we're only the football member only, that already kind of sets you apart. Let's be honest. We already know that. But as a step sibling, the back then we were told, okay, if we want to come to our conference, you have to pay subsidies because it's going to be so much more expensive for us to go to Hawaii, even though we haven't really done the numbers yet or anything. So we're going to just make an arbitrary number and throw it out there and say that you have to pay this much money. I'm sure there were some calculations that went into it, but a very flat, like if you fly from California, you fly from here. Like if it's that arbitrary, it's clear that you are not interested in the actual financials. You're interested in maybe the optics surrounding it. Oh yeah, we can take them, but don't worry, they're paying us. We're paying for UNLV to come to us, San Jose to come to us. Oh wait, no. But at the same time, okay, well, we'll let them do their little spectrum thing then, since they, they'll be able to do their get money that way. Okay, thanks. So that just evens us up. Really, the money that we're going to get from Spectrum, which is going to go, which they're going to add sports, they're going to add women's water polo, and we're going to talk about it. That's important to their lineup. But football, provisionally, football as a part of this package is on Spectrum pay-per-view. It's not on regular Spectrum channels. And if you have a Spectrum box, it's probably the channel that they defaulted to every time you turn the box on. And I'm not sure how to change that, actually. But I don't care. I mean, it's not my parents' box. But if I'm watching it or something, it's like, I think it's a smart move to get it on that channel and get people. So I like that, actually. I like that. Actually, I take that back. I like that because it forces people to watch the channel. And turn it on and it goes immediately to that channel. Maybe you'll catch a glimpse of something that'll catch your interest. So that's a positive. But I'm not sure if that's on every box or if that's just something that happened on my parents' boxes. They're like, oh, they like sports. Make it on OC12 or whatever, 16. I used to have my show on OC16 with Bob Hogue, Pac West Magazine. And it was fun, it's just hard to fill out. We got to be, if you watched like the state football championship game in 2010 or something, 11, you probably saw my show at halftime with me and Bob. That was fun times. But UH at that time was still on K5. Then in 2014, so then K5 had it. K5 had it on tape delay. K5 started showing it delayed one day, I guess, or later. And then it was right after the game, right? But TV was negotiated so differently back then. And that's something that has changed too, is like the money. The money has exponentially getting higher. But it's not going to the players. It's not going to the people. It's the same scholarship, or whatever they get, because not everybody's getting the same stuff. Yet they're the ones, at the end of the day, that are bearing the brunt of this, of the work a lot of the time. Having to be on the field, having to go to school, having to do everything. So clearly, as a product, as a standalone product, watching football, we have commodified it to a place where people are going to pay for it, and the demand is there. Obviously, the demand is there. My demand is too high, probably. I got to turn the knob down on all of my football desire and demand. But when it comes to everyone else, some people are just getting started. Some people don't even know about UH football, and that's really what changed. When the 80s, when the attendance changed, and there were some losing seasons, but you have to get those fans back somehow. And then by the time the first Spectrum pay-per-view deal happened, really right before the Norm Chow era, it was gone. I mean, it was hard to keep people on pay-per-view, hard to keep people paying for something. And Blangiardi comes up, makes a good point too. And I'm gonna play that interview, about 17 minutes long, and it's really worth every bit of it. But he talks about the inability to, or the exclusionary part of pay-per-view. That's really what it is. It's exclusionary, right? It keeps people out who can't watch it. Whereas, and I'm going to give this caveat as well, because Rick Blangiardi was on the opposing end, right? He was the head of Hawaii News Now, which had KHNO, which had K5. So he wanted to renegotiate in 2014, and UH went ahead and re-signed with Spectrum. I'm not sure if they tried, if Hawaii News Now gave up on that, on bidding or what, because Spectrum got the contract again. But Rick Blangiardi also says he would have made it free. It wouldn't have been on pay-per-view, Hawaii News Now in 2014. This is what he said in his own words, and I have to believe him because I have no other intention in seeing where else he would have put it on. He had the idea of putting it on pay-per-view, but he would have had it for free. UH gets the guaranteed money up front. That's the thing, right? It's like, and pay-per-view gets a double dip. They get to sell ads during the game. So you're still subjected to ads that they sold. It's not like they're giving you special content to fill the entire time. Not like WWF, right, where they took us backstage and then we got to see like Macho Man and talking. No, they go to commercial. So tell me how I'm paying to watch commercials. Especially, and we want to go there. I'm paying to watch commercial in the stadium too, because there's commercial in the stadium. That is another part that's not porno. That's not a thing about football. You don't go to watch. First of all, you can barely hear over the audio at Aloha Stadium, and then you're gonna play a commercial during the game. Okay. But so with the 6 remaining games, it looks like UH is going to have to put them on pay-per-view, or I don't know if they're going to get picked up. So there's still like some games. They have additional games that they get to choose, CBS and Fox, because I'm sure they're just like, ooh, we don't even know. And you never know. A team could go on a run, right? And that's the whole point, right? A team could go on a tear. A team that might have kind of come out of nowhere and it's maybe undefeated, or an undefeated Mountain West team, that maybe is not featured that much. Could be us, could be a game that we pick up. But at least those channels, yes, are part of a cable plan. But people buy cable for the most part and have access to that. It's different when you have a standalone pay-per-view. It's just much harder. And at the same time, you can say, why does it matter? Because the money is guaranteed up front, right? So, yes, it is. So what's the difference? Guaranteed money here, but free for everyone and not free for some people. If Blangiardi, like he says, if they got the contract in 2014, it would have been free. They would have made the money. First of all, they couldn't afford it. They can afford the $2 million offhand. It's not like that's not a bill that they're going to have a hard time paying. It's not like they're going to default on a bill, on a $2 million bill. It's not, and it's peanuts. He talks about it. It's nickels and dimes. It's not even that much. If they got to the negotiating table, I guarantee that Blangiardi would have used that as a negotiating point. And this is a shout out to Benjay because we love Benjay, but Benjay was the athletic director then. So I'm not sure why he decided on that. And if he comes into the comments, which he does sometimes, he can talk about that. But exclusionary versus inclusionary. How do we make the product? How do we prevent it from getting out to people? Okay, make them pay to have to watch the football game. Make them pay to have to watch UH versus Albert Duquesne or whoever we played. I mean, you're asking people for a lot there, especially road games that a lot of people won't even watch if they're at home. But that's fine because Spectrum already gave us the money up front, so it's totally fine, right? No. My opinion is not fine if less people are watching because eventually people stop getting pay-per-view as well. And then you're just a cycle of people. And we've seen it reflected in the numbers of people in the stands. We've seen it reflected in the numbers of people donating to the program. We've seen it reflected in a lot of the numbers, right? Of students in the stands. And even Blangiardi will say that it's not that it's a necessarily a terrible thing that I mean, it's a bad thing. I'll take this back. It's a bad thing that the students don't come, but it's not something that is completely out of the ordinary for UH because it's more of a commuter school. But still, I'm not sure what kind of outreach is even done for that. So that's a major part is continuing the outreach, continuing to get people to come to games, but it's hard to do that when they can't even see it or when they're not exposed to it. So what Blangiardi says is the catch was before, if we put it on TV, people aren't going to come to the game. But the opposite happened. More people were introduced to the product. And there's a lot of ways, not only television, to get people to watch the TV, because we won. Go back to winning. We won this special. We won 10 games. Or 10-5. 10-5. That was a great season. And we can criticize Rolo all we want, the way he left Lola. I have issues, still some, not issues. I have things that I wish he had differently when he left. For me personally, even that doesn't matter anymore. But there's another 1,000 reasons why I know why he left and why it makes sense. And being 10-5 and barely getting 20,000 people to your title game to win a title, a divisional title, is not good at all. This is something I've been harping on since that game, which was an amazing game, and we won. We're going to Boise. We represented. I don't know how many fans were won over from that season. I mean, I'm adding people to my season ticket. I'm trying to do what I can do, add people to my season ticket crew, add, new faces to, hopefully my page and promote UH as much as possible. Wear the gear. It's not a thing. Wear all the gear. I'm wearing a shirt from Baseballism right now, who recently got the trademark from UH, and you'll be seeing me rocking some Baseballism gear on the show as well. But that's important. That's a part of the branding. It's part of the marketing. So it's a big when that commodity, which is the TV rights which is an asset, right, to the program, and that's why that's a very, very high financial asset clearly to all programs, right? When you're looking at the Pac-12, right? The Pac-12 who signed this $1 billion agreement several years ago, and people are like, oh. And then when you prorate it, they're getting screwed now. By today's standards, they're already getting screwed. They're way behind. So this next one, I mean, schools are looking at getting $25 million a year, $30 million a year, $25 million a year, something like that. $25 million a year. UH is getting one from the conference, and then getting the other 2 to 3, or 1 and 2.5 to 3 and 1 point to 1.5. So. And I'm actually, I feel like I'm inflating the numbers a little bit so that UH is about even to the other members. But when you still look at that in comparison, it's crazy. But when you look at the number itself, it's pretty high. And people are going to say, wow, that's really incredible that all this money is going to this department. And if I'm a professor and a tenured professor, and I can't get enough staff in my department or can't pay for adjuncts or something, they're going to say something. They already have been. So this is an asset, UH football, athletics, that needs to be treated and treated like a growable asset, like something that not only just collects like this cow, like, okay, we have games, people come to game, they buy ticket. Like, no, you inherited that. You inherited those people coming and buying ticket, and now less people coming buying tickets. So someone has to be able to. I understand, and Ben J is on here. There's so much more to the story, and I'm sure, and that's why I'm not even going to get into that. And maybe he, and well, I'd love to have Ben J come in again and talk about it. But the fact is, at the end of the day, it took the product off of free television. It took the product out of the hands. And it's very, I haven't seen any other school that does it. I've researched other schools that do it. But we're in a very particular situation, a very strange situation. So I don't know if any other, and I know for a fact, no other school has to deal with these kind of things. No other school has to deal with the distance, the proximity, the type of people, the athletes, the fan base. But at the same time, what are we? Do we appreciate the assets that we do have that make us different, that we can grow? And that is hard to. That's hard to deny that when the product has changed, as the product has become harder for schools or for the fan base to reach, to connect with, it's disappeared. And it's nobody in particular's fault, because there are a lot of factors that go into play. But we already know where we are, and now that we're in a place where making money is at a premium, obviously, and sustainability. I mean, we're talking about sustaining programs, which is crazy, right? For these guys who are raking in $100 million a year, and they're talking about how they have to cut. I mean, it's crazy. More money, more problems, because the money has just gotten higher and higher. So where is this money going? Because it's not going to the players. It's not going to athletes. Maybe indirectly in buying other stuff for them, making a nicer room, but training facilities. But at the end of the day, this TV money is really probably the largest asset, and can do so much too. Sorry, I'm sweating in here. It's super hot right now. It's super hot, because it is. It's a hot topic right now, especially because so many seasons are being crunched, and they want to get the most out of it. They want to get more TV out of it. But thank you, Ben, for responding, Ben J. And shout out, Ben J is a good guy, very good guy, and that's why it was nothing. And we're talking about Ben because I thought even in his time at UH, there are a lot that I'm appreciative that he accomplished, and we talked about that on the show. And that, I know this was a tough thing, was the pay-per-view. But like anybody at the head of a corporation, that's where it's going to stop with. And it's unfortunate because we had an athletic director prior who really got caught up in a Stevie Wonder blunder, right? Which we can talk about. So that's what happens, right? It's the name of the job. But at the end of the day, growing the program and growing the fan base is of such supreme importance, and it gets overlooked at a lot of schools. I'm not going to just talk about our school, but overall, Boise, something I brought up on this program before of someone that I met, one of the other super fans that I met in Boise, who went to 25 games. So he's proud. He said 25 games in a row. And he couldn't believe I've been to 60 games. 60 games, but this doesn't mean that much. But, 60 straight games. He went to 25, and, he talked about how he started his own groups and taking people to games, but he's not the rich guy. He's not going to be the guy that is in the club. But he's being crowded out. And a lot of guys myself. And that's how it's been since I was a kid. I mean, I used to go to games by myself as a kid. And even as a younger kid, I was at games. It was my parents. My parents were not in Nakoa or AKA. But you knew where the division was between the people that were. And in our fan base, those divisions are pretty tangible sometimes. It's still towards me, who is okay. But that's another. Those are the politics and the unfortunate parts within UH athletics and within the structure of UH that prevent UH from being able to grow past this. So our new contract pay-per-view are locked in. So sorry, you got to watch it on pay-per-view. I mean, the people on the mainland, I believe there's still that deal to have it stream. So if anybody wants it over there, it can be. But this is what the name of the game. But the money's up front, so the money's there. But there is a sacrifice. There is a trade-off. There's absolutely a trade-off. It's not just the money. So that is the thing that's totally been overlooked. And I would love to talk to Benjay because I think he has a lot to add to that. But let's talk. I want to bring up this video with Rick Blangiardi, and it's about 17 minutes. It's excerpts from his interview with me as well. So I'll bring it up.
Sir, when we saw the opportunity to bring it to television and all the fun we had with that going back to 1984 initially with football on a one-day delayed basis, but really the magic was doing Wahine volleyball live in prime time out of Klum Gym.
Cool.
And I could tell you some stuff anecdotally about that, but that's what really, really helped us a great deal.
So TV at that time, it sounds like it's kind of burgeoning. I mean, even the NBA too was delayed, right, at that time. So it's not like live sports was like a big thing.
Here was the deal. I started up. I left coaching and went to work at KGMB. KGMB in those days was the heritage station, was the dominant television station, and they did UH sports, but they only Hawaii in those years just 11-game schedule would play 9 home games, 2 away, and they had a contract every year to televise those 2 away games. The only ones that were ever on TV was when Hawaii played away. So I got familiar with selling the football team, but I also got familiar with the 1979 when the Wahine played in Carbondale at Southern Illinois, my son Ryan's alma mater, for the national championship, and knew full well what a great television product it was. So that all predated when I got to KHNL in 1984. So what happened in 1984 is I got there in February. That May, and the station was initially called Kiku. No history of ever doing sports, but at KGMB, I knew men's football, obviously football. I knew the Wahine volleyball through the national. We did a regional NCAA tournament as well, but also we used to televise rainbow basketball games. We did about 12 or so a year. So UH Sports was on KGMB. It was back in a different era when you could be on a network affiliate and you could take the preemptions. So I knew from that, and having spoken around the state, all over the state, all over Hawaii, the grassroots appeal of Hawaii. And I always thought, knowing full well that the people in the neighborhoods had such great pride that television could be a unifying factor. So the reason why it was a one-day delay was that was the best I could talk Stan Sheriff into as the athletic director, was, to play it safe because they were really worried about hurting the gate. That seemed to be innocuous at the time. We had such great success with that early on that we ended up moving it to same-day delay, and that was even better because in the Dick Tomey era, I think, Wayne, you're a little too young to remember, but we were, I can tell you, Jim Lee and I would be on the radio, and they put up this attendance at 49,550 people, and we would say, where are those other 450 people tonight? Because there were so many nights when it was up there sold out, and the place would go crazy, and it would rock, And that was even in the years sometimes when, because of the sellouts, we were actually doing simulcast on radio and TV live, and I mean, it was terrific because, there's no other venue that can seat 50,000 people. So here in Hawaii, right, it's the only opportunity to bring 50,000 people together. And knowing the teams were playing with great intensity and great pride, very, very exciting stuff. It was great.
Was there any sense of apprehension maybe that you'd have less fans at the game because you'd start putting it on television at that time?
No. In fact, that's how I worked my way through that whole season. But I was able to convince Stan, which actually proved, and that because we needed to use television to be as inclusive as possible, not exclusive, which is where the product has been for a long time now, and it's been a source of my angst in the 18 years since I came home at not having the television rights. Once we formed Hawaii News now 10 years ago, and had control over the KHNL K5 operation. So no, it was treated like a television commercial, if you will. I could sell you that shirt you're wearing with good, powerful television commercials, and this is an entree into people's homes and keep the product in front of people. Yeah. And sure enough, that's precisely what happened. So the gate didn't hurt. In fact, I remember having conversations with Les Murakami to fast forward to baseball, and they just opened up the stadium, if you can imagine those years before it was named after him. Wow. And Hawaii was in baseball, really one of the leading schools in the country, the 3,400 or whatever it was in attendance, but most college baseball teams in bigger countries don't draw that for a game. But here it was just, so nice in that stadium. They were so good. They were really worried. We put that on, and suddenly you had, people clamoring for tickets. So, because that's what we were able to do. And that was true even out of Klum Gym. I knew that experience. All those sweaty nights, we could only seat about 2,200 people watching the Wahine play. They were so great. people knew about Wahine volleyball.
Yeah.
They Wahine volleyball was popular throughout the, but nobody was catching that magic because unless you were in the gym, so once we put that on and people could see it, I mean, it really, quite honestly, that's what built the Stan Sheriff Center. With all due respect to the history of men's basketball and even men's volleyball, credit to Dave Shoji and his guys, women's volleyball, I can tell you firsthand, because I remember over beer with Stan Sheriff on napkins talking about building that arena. It was women's volleyball, Wahine volleyball, that drove the success of that.
Well, I mean, the growth of athletics in Hawaii, I mean, that was pivotal, that time going from independent, becoming Division I, growing certain sports. But at that time, too, you talk about this fan support, you talk about where those other 450 people, I mean, we're clawing now today to get, half of that. 450 people. So, I mean, and I shared it earlier today, the editorial on Hawaii News Now. You in November of last year, right before Hawaii plays San Diego State for the West Divisional title. In my opinion, one of the biggest games, probably in 20 years, one of the biggest games in history, probably, of the stadium, maybe, of importance. And we couldn't even we barely got 20,000, I think, for that game.
Barely got 20,000. And I think I watched that today. I hadn't seen that since I did it, whatever. And I could see my enthusiasm, if you will. But I was really angry, to be honest with you, because Ryan, my son, comes to me. I've had season tickets since I finished coaching, and our section used to be packed. Now we're like the only ones in it, And I look right across the field at the student section, which has always been challenged, to be honest with you, because UH has been always more of a kind of a community team. The student body section, but still, yet when you would see it, there was all these empty orange seats. You sit there and you could count on one hand almost, it seems. And I'm being facetious, but it was pretty much like that. I mean, it was just sad. I mean, because as I tried to emphasize as eloquently as I could, I mean, it's just you just said it, one of the biggest games. You would think in a town that prides itself on being. So here's the thing, we get that, and Hawaii fights for that berth to be in that situation, which they actually go on to win. And yet, before that, we sell out 50,000 for the Cowboys and Rams game, before that season in a matter of hours, maybe a couple of days, but a matter of hours. So you knew there was an appetite. I know it's the NFL, but it was preseason. Still yet, people hungry for football. And so that's the disconnect. Yeah. See, I maintained all along, I said earlier, we were inclusive. We were showcasing it, not to the detriment of the gate, to create a desire in people to want to go and be a part of it. Over the years, what happened was they made it exclusive. And I'm not going to denigrate Spectrum because it doesn't do any good. It's not necessarily their fault. They made the deal. But once they start putting this stuff on pay-per-view, cable-only operation with really no promotion, whatever, it pulled it away from a lot of people. Okay? And, at the end of the day, that's the opposite of what we were doing before. And so I think what's happened is just we eroded over time. They relied too long on a fan base that seemed so loyal. But as people got older, they stopped going because of whatever, even in the different venues, not just Aloha Stadium. People pass on, whatever, they start to lose that base. And as we said earlier, the student base was never really there. Where are you going to bring, when you see in the mainland these stadiums that are packed, because when these kids, at the time when they were kids going to college, they tailgated, they went to the stadium. After they graduate, they want to go back and continue to be a part of it. We kind of lost that. So we had that great older fan base. They got a little too old, got too expensive for them. We didn't do anything to cultivate the younger fan base. I mean, this happened over a period of time. It wasn't like a suddenly thing. Yeah. But once you've lost them, you can't just bring them back. Yeah. And beyond that, the university never really did anything to market to the fan base. I mean, honestly, you think about it. There was very little promotion, if anything, creating awareness, creating a demand. None of that. We've been void of that. So you had a product being seen on the air on the pay-per-view basis with no marketing effort behind it to create awareness or an appetite to go to the games. And over time, you wonder why there's nobody in the stands. You got to market this product in today's world. So you were saying earlier to me, Wayne, about it being a societal shift. Yeah, there's some truth to that. The bigger stadiums, everybody is suffering some fan erosion. But I believe here in Hawaii, we have such a tremendous whether it's football or any sport you want to talk about, incredible fan base for sports, highly active people who are out doing all kinds of things that, given the size of the venues and given who we are, given our isolation, given the quality of the teams, we should be able to put a lot of people in all those venues. And just because it's also a recreational thing to do, and it's always been the number one show. So missing on that is really really sad in my opinion, because I think the UH program, the teams, the men and women, those men's teams, women's teams that play, and we know because of the national standards, compete at a very high level, compete really well, should be better attended. Should really be better attended.
And we talked about how being inclusive means we want to sell the product on television so that more people know how great it is in the house.
Don't charge people for an away game. How about that? Who the hell's going to pay $75 for an away game? If you're not even interested in the home games because of the circumstance, now they're going to go away. It's a bit, you can't afford that.
As you know, there's been a huge paradigm shift in terms of how programs have been funded, in terms of, and it is in that way as well that you said is television. That's the way that they've gone, and the SEC and the Power Five have commanded huge contracts, and that's left a lot of the mid majors behind. That includes UH. I mean, would you say? Well, I mean, some will say that pay-per-view is that's money to compensate us for not being in a major conference, and we have to pay these subsidies. But
it's nickels and dimes. A couple of $1 million a year that they're getting is, what, we were prepared to pay that when I tried to get the contract back because it would have been to the benefit of K5 or whatever. A couple of $1 million in local broadcast rights is, I know it sounds cavalier, over a couple of $1 million. The big money comes from being aligned in a conference, if you will, like, let's say, the Pac-12 and the revenues. In fact, their contract is almost up. I was up there last year making some private inquiries to try to determine, just before Nick's last year, before he left, actually. And had meetings. I took meetings at UCLA, I took meetings at Arizona State, and actually discussions with Larry Scott, the Pac-12 commissioner. And I can tell you that there wasn't a snowball's chance in hell in Hawaii could get into that. They weren't interested in expanding. And my point is that in 2 years' time, in 23, their contract is up. And I could give you a lot of insight on this, but in that contract now, they didn't like their last deal, even though they got, I think every team got 20-some-odd million. They're going to look to do, this is what they told me, a multi-year deal to the tune of probably a 20-year deal. Going to be worth billions of dollars, billions with a B in revenue for that conference. And they were looking at different players like Amazon, and the world has changed in television rights. I remember when ESPN first came out, everybody said, "What the hell is that?" That kind of thing. But and there are other networks as well. But that's what they're looking at in long-term commitments. And so we're up there, and I was up there personally in trying to explore their interest in us. And first of all, they said we would never expand by one; we'd have to do it by two. They ruled out BYU, San Diego State, Utah State, pretty much any school you might think of, because even though they took Utah and Colorado in the last expansion, because we didn't have, they don't have the research base. Hawaii actually academically is qualified, has a research school, but you have to come from a sister school. But the bottom line to all that was we also had no home attendance, so we would not be accretive to any viewing audience. In their opinion, we're also suffer from being a small market. It was hard enough taking on Colorado and Salt Lake City, not big television markets. So that's not really good. And candidly, what I learned, and probably, well, now so much after it doesn't make a difference, but they were struggling to keep USC and UCLA in the Pac-12 because a lot of conferences in this realignment for these mega contracts were trying to woo the two LA schools out of the Pac-12. And when it comes to money, I mean, UCLA this year were operating at a deficit. A big deficit. So Dan Guerrero just retired as the dean of the Pac-12 coaches, but they were in a deficit more like $18 million or whatever. So, from the standpoint of college sports, big business, etc., they wanted to make sure they could keep those schools intact. There's nothing sacrosanct that said they couldn't leave for a better deal, given the fact that football funds so many of the other programs, they become so expensive. So they want to take care of that. So they made it really clear to me they weren't interested in splitting the money 14 ways. They'd rather split it 12 ways. But at least we made a run at finding out what the feasibility was.
I mean, and the first point you brought up was the fans, and I think to a lot of people in Hawaii, if you said, "Oh, Pac-12," just like kids, right? When they graduate from high school, "Oh, I like go Pac-12, and I like play at UH. I'm too good for UH or something." We're just this. I don't understand. We're a Division I team, like you said. We should be marketed better. We should be, and top of mind for our athletes. But at the same time, that allure of a Power 5 name or being attached would bring, in my opinion, would fill the stadium.
Yeah, it would. That was the whole reason why I was up there. I went up there to do that. No, it would. First of all, look at your non-conference games and what you would schedule and what you would have for conferences. Because one of the things I know for a fact that Hawaii fans would turn out for a decent opponent.
Yes.
Even though, despite what we just said, they would take a whole marketing effort with this. What we just said about the San Diego State game before, but suddenly there is prestige. It's well known on the major schools. Plus, it would really be a great enhance for us for the university, even academically, right? Not to even mention what that money would buy us and being part of the conference. And they made it clear to me also we wouldn't go in there for the first however many years on an equal share. You have to tear it up. Still, yet it would be very lucrative. So this would be a great enhancement academically, athletically, and a source of pride for the community, okay?
Absolutely.
You need a lot of people in line wanting to do that.
Yes.
And we don't have those people in line. As case in point, we drop Arizona this year when we think we're going to have a football schedule, and we book Robert Morris. That is the antithesis of what you and I are talking about from the standpoint of a vision, a big idea, big dreams. Let's ramp up. Let's play the best in the country. You can't do that. So, we have a new head coach. I've not met him yet. First time going back to 1965. There's been a guy in the job I've not met in the head coaching role. But be that as it may, it's not about me meeting him. I'm just saying we're going to have to wait a whole other year and we'll see where we are.
In a whole nother year, it's possible that you'll be mayor.
Alrighty. So that was a pretty stirring interview. And like I said, know that Rick Blangiardi obviously, when he was at Hawaii News Now, did not have the contract for UH Sports, and said it was a source of angst still for him. So clearly, it's a personal thing to him as well. But even through that lens, I understand why it's personal to him, being that he played for UH, being that he coached at UH, being that he negotiated one of the initial deals for TV and incorporated that base philosophy that television would be an allure to fans. People would see how much fun they're having. But he also talked about that issue as well. Even people see on TV, if they're not that excited about coming to the game, why are they going to come? And they have to pay for the game too. So that makes it very difficult. Mahal de Benjay, he did come into the comments, and I look forward to talking to him later on. But a friend of our show, and a friend not because he's above criticism or below it, a friend because he's a guy that not only was on the show but is very open with his time at UH, and I know that a guy that sincerely was passionate about his time as well. That's why I know he's a friend to the program. That's the most important part, really. At the core, if you're at UH, if you're a part of the team, the coaching staff, the administration, you have to have a love for the program. If you don't, it's really, you can't be there. You can't be there just for money, and that's what a lot of what the season feels like. It feels like just for money, to be able to balance both. Obviously, people's jobs are on the line, and some of the Pac-12 people are saying that even with them going back, they're still going to have deficits. But it's still going to be the money will drive them to keep lower deficits, and that's crazy. And Blangiardi brought that up. Pac-12 is going to be looking for a major deal, and he talked about Amazon, and I saw Apple. I don't know if he meant Apple, but Apple TV was looking at getting the Pac-12 deal, just because. And it's crazy because I work in television. Obviously, I'm an actor. I auditioned for CBS, just auditioned for Showtime. I just auditioned for CBS, auditioned for all the networks, and I know for me, if I know how the networks work, so I understand. Well, media and conglomerates are crazy, but at least in terms of how media they distribute content and what channels are what, and um, every major media conglomerate wants to have their sports arm, and so you have Fox and CBS and all of these stations, but they'll work together on like for UH or for the Mountain West, they doing rights, right? Not just one exclusively providing rights, but sharing, and that's interesting as well. That's something you would see in a lot of other industries. I would think like two rivals, like um, kind of pairing up to see what pickup games they could get. Because right now there's 42 games, 21 on each side, or I believe 28 and 21, or 28 in terms of how many games are going to be broadcast on Fox side and how many on the CBS side. But you know, the Pac-12, even when they signed that billion-dollar contract, he brought that up. Blangiardi was talking about in 2 years, the Pac-12 contract is finally up, and they're going to be happy because their contract, which they were so proud about, signing the last time, which was so unprecedented, the numbers, it ended up being devalued in comparison to the contracts of the SEC is commanding like $300 million a year. So you divide about 14 ways, you're like $19.6 million a year. I mean, this is an incredible amount of money for TV contracts. That's why it's always better to be in a Power 5. And if I were to go in all in, I would find a way to let the schools keep the money. I mean, if I clearly Blangiardi, like you talked about, Rick, going and trying to negotiate or being a part of that Pac-12 negotiating, talked about UH and our ability to get in and how much they weren't really interested in us. I get that, and I think it would be really hard. I'm not saying getting to Pac-12 would be easy at all. That's not at all what I'm saying. But financially, we want to make the numbers work. How do we make the contracts work, right? We want to make a long-term contract. How do we make the numbers work? We've already been in this Mountain West scenario for 8 years, 9 years, paying subsidies. Going back to that point, yet Boise still wants to hold on to their power because they have leverage because they're going to another conference. Like no other conference is knocking down their door right now. No other Power 5 conference is knocking down Boise's door right now. So they don't really have that anymore, or that thing. And that's kind of what Craig Thompson's saying. By 2025, they're not going to be able to just do their own thing on the side, scheduling wise. But with UH, okay, well, it's also 2020, and we're not as desperate to get into a conference. Not to say that we want to leave the Mountain West, but I feel like the somebody should be back on the table. If you're awkwardly going to be able to sit at that table and be like, oh, Boise, you're done already in 3 years, and everybody's voting against you, and you're the one who votes for yourself. On the flip side, there should be some people who they're never going to give it up because they're not going to obviously want to lose the money. So that's the hard part. So that's why independence is brought up, which is really difficult. Even if you got the money back from independence, it might not be worth it if it's not done in the right way. Like the independence would require a lot. Even BYU, I thought they might be able to pull it off, and it's not really been good for them. I mean, first of all, they're not winning that as much as they should be. Maybe this year they are, but we beat them last time we played them last year, and they consistently get they get high level recruits, higher than I would say the average mid-major team. Obviously, being a church school and with active Mormons that are going to go to the school, they have an advantage there, especially with Polynesian members as well of the church. So, BYU is special and different and unique as well. Like UH is unique and special and different. But how do you leverage what makes you special and unique? How do you not just see it as a liability? How do you see it as a plus? And I think Hawaii has a lot to offer. And it might not be on the financial side. You might have to dig deeper, dig to the core. What's at the core of this program? And at the end of the day, people only, think about the final money line. Which, if that's what it is, then this has become is just a business. Which maybe, and to some people it is. To outsiders looking in, it just looks like a business. Definitely the NFL does when they see people's salaries. Right, when they look at Dak's salary, and that's why, when look at Dak or some of the other NFL players, when they lose leverage, and it's like, oh gosh, I got hurt or something. You lose out on a long-term deal. You lose out on the benefits of that. And we need to see how that can work in our favor. Because I'd be long-term committed, right, to Pac-12 for life. I'd be Pac-12 for life. I'll give you whatever, 95%. Just give us enough. We can operate on our budget, even if we're handcuffed. Honestly, even if we're handcuffed, even if we enter the Pac-12, in my opinion, as literally the stepchild, but like the stepchild who finally gets to become like maybe a part of the children in like 10, 15 years. To me, that'd be worth it. Definitely worth it. If they're already getting huge amounts of money, I mean, we've heard for so long how much, they love to show Hawaii on TV and beautiful sights, and it's attractive to people. So that's not everything. Obviously, the TV market, the local TV market, is concerning. Obviously, the amount of people that are watching games obviously is concerning, especially if they're on pay-per-view. So they're going to look at those kind of metrics. It's going to be difficult for us, for UH, to justify entry into the Pac-12. But looking at the current deal, it is what it is. It's prison. It is. It's beneficial. I feel like it's not bad. I don't feel like UH is like getting screwed. No, not at all. But the subsidies, I think UH is getting screwed. I think that's deeper. I think that, and especially with the numbers, that just comes from a bias towards Hawaii and traveling to Hawaii. It's inherent in NCAA and that building and amongst administration and amongst a lot of self-aggrandizing people whom I've had the pleasure of being in the presence of at a lot of these athletics events. But when you have to look at it from that frame, can't look at it, just as a fan. I can be a fan because I understand. I can see both sides. I know what's going on. I know what I'm buying myself into. And I put a lot of my own personal funds, almost everything I have, into what I do for this team and what I do for building up the fan base, building up our visiting fan base. And it's only worth it to me because I love it. So that's crazy. But I'm an anomaly. That's not, you can't have other crazy people like me, because people who are logical are different. They don't let their crazy like minds take over them. Sean had some comments. Well, first, Brandon says, I bet all Mountain West teams hope they get to be on national TV at home when they play UH because they won't get the exposure with Facebook or however. Or actually, they might rather have if they only get a few national games, well, everybody wants to be on national TV, obviously. But the good thing for a lot of those teams is, like, if they're on in Hawaii, they know that the Hawaii broadcast is going to have the game. I don't think every other. Remember how sometimes you watch and you're like, who the heck are these? Like, they have a student-run team or something. I'm sure by now all the other schools have local teams because not the national rights are not going to get all the games, right? But Sean says, I love beating Pac-12 teams. Yeah. Sean said, didn't Spectrum use their exclusive right provision to extend pay-per-view in 14? The way I read it, that it seemed like that maybe you can share because it looks like I would still negotiate nonetheless. I mean, if there were exclusive rights that had to go, I don't think there's any conference. There's no provision where it's just like, yeah, if they hit, I don't know if there's a provision where they hit a certain benchmark or something, but that triggered the extension. But they could have negotiated in 2014. But I'll find out more because I'm gonna hear from the source himself. Pay-per-view encourages Sean says pay-per-view encourages a passive fan base. Pay-per-view keeps us as a slave to travel subsidies in Mountain West. Both things hurt UH. Yeah, I think so. And the first one, the fan base, is what we can control. We can control bringing more people to the game. We can control making the atmosphere in the stadium better. Those are under our control. That's just a choice to not market those things, to not put more emphasis on those things. It's a choice to want to reach out to people. It's a choice to want to bring somebody in, to put a personal touch on something. As somebody who runs a business myself, it's my choice. I do things how I want to do it too. That's why I love what I do, because everything I do is the way I would do it. That's the kind of person I am. Watching my show, I can watch my own show because the show really is made for me. It's people like me who like to watch or want to know stuff about UH football. That's why I make this. That's why I do these things. That's why I do the research. You don't see me trying to make money off of this. I'm not adding my Venmo or PayPal. You guys can feel free to send money for the show if you want, because I don't have any sponsors. Just saying what I know, and the passion that I have that comes from within me. That's what's being expressed. That's the difference. Sean says nobody knows the ins and outs of the UH TV contract more than Rick. Nobody. Yeah, nobody does. I mean, he set some of the precedents for those contracts. That's the thing. If he is there, he's been there from the beginning, and It's like I said, even showing Rick Blangiardi's video, that was not any kind of endorsement for mayor. That's just why I had him on and Keith Amemi on, because I wanted to have both mayoral candidates who are both involved in the sports industry. So it made sense to have them both on. With Rick, which is something that's different from him and Keith, is that Rick is obviously a lot more involved with UH, having coached, having played, having negotiated the first contract, talking about the day after with Stan Sheriff, showing the games on TV the day after, but wanting to bring that experience into the home, wanting to share that experience in Klum Gym, the raucous atmosphere, the passion. I saw some of those games. They went back and showed a lot of them on TV, and it's so different. And the game was different, but still the people were so passionate. They were having fun, and that needs to be brought back. Also, when you go back, a lot of people aren't wearing the UH gear, so I'm not sure if UH gear was just like not cool back then or whatever. But people need to. I'm glad more people today are wearing gear to the games. But Baseballism, another company that just got the UH trademark, they're going to be selling. So I'll be showing some of their stuff off. This is one of their shirts right here, and they did for Hawaii Strong. And Leo Yang says they got to make it to the stadium more attractive. Yeah. Yep. They got to make it going to the stadium. They have to. And that is the other flip of the coin. Yes. Some people are just like, okay, I love the team this much. I'm going to get the pay-per-view. Pay-per-view is not cheap, right? What is it? You guys get $75 a game or whatever it is? If you have your crew and that's cool and you guys all chip in, of course it's nothing. And I know a lot of people do that. They watch in people's garages or whatever. But that just encourages people not to go to the game. And it's funny because that's the opposite effect, right? We wanted it to be free and see people that can watch it so they get excited, so they want to be there. I got to make a confession. I'm not exactly super excited when I see University of Central Florida win games because sometimes I feel like they stole some of our best players. But when I look at them on TV at home or before COVID, and I look at their stadium, and I look at their fans, and I look at like their black and gold, and I look at how ruckus, I get it. Because they're a mid-major team, but I get it. I get why some Mililani boys would want to go all the way to Orlando. And that's the effort that those people put in the athletic departments into making that product on the field even more attractive, that because of the game environment that surrounds it, that surrounds the program. So that is very important. Completely agree with that. In the end, is UH getting about roughly making for their program roughly what the other Mountain West counterparts are making? Yes. So the numbers might kind of balance out. The numbers are not going to be that far off. Excuse me. 4 million, whatever, 3 million. But guess what? That's not that much. That's not a lot of money. And that's what Rick Blangiardi was saying earlier. It's really not that much in the grand scheme of things. You can find other ways to make that much money. You can do a lot of things to make money. That's just one way. It's just how you use this TV rights. The Mountain West, my preference would be that all the schools were even. Sorry, Boise, you're back. UH, you're in. But even if you prorate the contract, just make it even. Everything even. No more subsidies, whatever. There's a lot of just entrapments into different provisions that UH can't seem to get out of, which is frustrating. And I'm sure it's frustrating for Dave Matlin and for everybody as well, connected to UH. And they're dealing with a lot of issues. So I'm not going to simplify them. But I'm going to say there are ways to get out of them. I'm not going to act like, oh my gosh, we're totally handcuffed. Just sign here. We're going to rubber stamp everything. Like, no. There are a lot of initiatives that can be put on the table that need to be. Absolutely. Game day, when we can get back to that. And who knows what it will be like getting people back into the stands. How long it'll take for people, even whenever we're free of COVID, whatever that means. We may never be. Who knows at this point? So things are going to be very different, and the sustainability is important, but also the extinction of the program is also a possibility. People need to get around that as well. And a lot of people won't say that, but that's very possible. And Ben J got in trouble for saying that. We talked about that. And it's not like he said it the way it was taken out kind of contextually. If you were just to take out what I said, it would be taken out contextually because I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if you don't think that there are people that would love that to happen, that are on that very campus, that walk around that campus, you're kidding yourself. It's not just like going to wherever these schools in the Midwest where everybody's just so crazed and football and everybody's there on, like, no. It's clear in the stands as well. That's reflected by the student body who attendance as well as to how much a lot of them care about UH football. But if this is a community program, a community-funded program, community-supported program, it needs to be it needs to be reciprocated back towards the community. So how do you do that? Some people say maybe we make free um, to keep the fan base or the season ticket holders happy. Because usually a lot of season ticket holders have been given some kind of, especially if you paid ahead for other programs, some kind of compensation for having to wait it out. So that needs to be done. But being able to satisfy your fan base is more than and building a fan base. It takes a lot more than just trying to get them to give you money. Or it starts with building that love for the game. Maybe, and we said this, having little kids come to the game, which I think the Mariota Foundation, Mariota bringing all those kids to the games every year, I think it's huge. I guarantee some of those kids will always think about, man, I could play on that field one day. I guarantee that. And I know, and they think about playing that uniform just from being that game. Whether they do it or not, obviously, is another thing, but Mariota is setting those seeds, and those seeds are important. Most seeds were set in me by my grandparents in the late 80s, early 90s. Had I not been going by myself or continue, because my parents come with me now, but it's more like they come with me. I don't think my parents would be going. My parents have gone to road games with me. If you've come on trips with me, you've seen them, but they're not the type that are going to go to every game at home as well. They might not go to any games. They might get the pay-per-view even, but they'll be fans. They'll be supportive, and that's not good. We need those type of people to go to the games to make it important. So whether it's strengthening those people, getting more of those people to go, I think a new stadium might usher in a new generation of fans, but making the atmosphere more important is more entertaining is important. So to review, I think we're going on this show. I think pay-per-view, good, bad, I don't know. Put it up in the air. Good because hey, we're making money, so we can't say like we're getting totally screwed, but it's definitely slowly been choking out a lot of our fan base, and that's it's hard to deny that. And it's reflected in the numbers of people at the games, reflected in a lot of things, and whether we want to move ahead with it, or it looks like we are now because we started a new contract. We have to think about, especially in the time of COVID, what's going to happen, and just the sustainability of the program, keeping the program alive. That's really what's on deck right now, and that's scary. Should be. Everybody should be scared about that. I'm scared about that. Everything is UH. In the 60 straight games, everything for me has been about UH football my whole life. And I've never asked for anything in return. I've never gotten anything in return. Do everything that I do is just out of my passion for this team and for the fan base and for the love I have for my grandmother, for my family that raised me and take me to the stadium, my friends that I go with, and the traditions that we've continued. That's at the forefront for me. The game is important, but those things are cultural aspects of it that if we eliminate those things, you don't think there's going to be an effect of those? You don't think there's going to be ramifications? You're kidding. Because already taking it off the television and making it where everybody can watch it has already had ramifications. It's already had consequences. Brandon says, hopefully when the players can earn money from playing football, they can be in more commercials and get exposure like NFL players and will want to watch them play at the stadium. Yeah, that's true too. That is absolutely true. I never thought about that. Once players, and soon players will be able to make money off their likeness, which is totally fine. If you're a chess champion or something, you work for a school or you play for a school, you have a scholarship, you cannot go play in chess tournaments. Or you're playing, that's not something that it's uniformly applied. So yes, players, and California has already made it known that by a certain year, all players will be able to be paid. Whether NCAA obviously the legislation is all going to change to conform, but that's already happening as well. So does anybody have any questions? You can leave questions if you have. We kind of went over the whole thing. Definitely go back to the beginning of the show if you get a chance and hear from an interview with Rick Blangiardi. Mahalo to everybody who are joining us. Mahalo to Ben J for joining us in the comments. Everything that I've said on here is factual. I can source everything that I say. So, but there is more to the story, especially with the contract, which I'm sure there is. I'm sure there's more to the story. I'd love to hear it and maybe funnel some of that back to you if I can. But at the end of the day, this show is not about the minutia of a contract. The show is about, today's topic was about how to sustain, how to maintain Division I program and have a flourishing fan base and create new fans, which is not happening right now. I mean, we're just hemorrhaging, really, looking at the numbers. So the opposite needs to be done. And how can that be done? How can we utilize what makes the program even better? Our location, so much makes UH different. So much makes it unique. And I think we're seeing it even with our football roster, players coming from all over. Obviously, Coach Graham and their connections are different, and the places they go into and recruit are different from maybe where some of our coaches used to go before, and that's exciting. It also shows that our kids will come here. So that'll be good. Sean says, good show. Go Bows. Thanks, Sean. Definitely go back and watch it. It's going to be on YouTube. We're going to be on YouTube later. But I have to upload it. So do everything about it. Nobody else. But for my engineer, me. For my producer, me. For my technician, me. See you guys next time. The Wake Coito Show.